Gregor Waltersdorfer is a sustainability advisor, auditor, and lecturer with 10 years of experience based in Luxembourg. In 2017, he received a PhD in engineering design. As an engineer by training, he has a strong interest in sustainable economic models. Gregor loves developing solutions and analyzing data for systemic impact. He has been part of the global movement Economy for the Common Good since 2011 and accompanied the first Luxembourgish municipalities and companies in their common good reporting.
I want to talk about the role of sustainability reporting as a transformational lever for the economy. So when you think of sustainability reporting, you could ask yourself why. When we have a reality check, we see that the 1.5-degree goal is in the Paris Agreement is missed, or will be really probably missed. Then with rising conflicts, at the moment, the political priorities are defense first. And we also see a lot of reactionary political measures, such as deregulation, because of the current developments. So how does sustainability reporting fit into this framing? And to elaborate that, I want to look back a few decades to put that development into perspective. So let's start in 2010, where the housing prices were soaring. So this is a chart from the Australian housing prices. And in 2011, that chart says it's 100, there is 100%. And you see that every 20 years, housing prices doubled. And that's not only an Australian phenomenon. You saw that in the US with the subprime crisis, also in Europe, where I stay. So people that wanted to afford a house on credit, they got indebted heavily. Then in 2019, so that's my European perspective, and I look forward to the intercontinental exchange. The regulations are there. So in the EU, there was the Green Deal. That was essentially the goal to become carbon neutral as a continent by 2050. So really ambitious goal, also with some political measures such as which later became unpopular, like the phase out of the thermal engines. 1 year later, the COVID crisis hit in, and so we had lockdowns. You all know the story. When the lockdowns was passed, people had some savings and they started consuming again. So, but there was not enough supply. So we had a lot of demand, but little supply. And inflation went up. And that was not the only driver after the COVID. There was also the invasion of Ukraine 1 year later, which the whole energy supply all over the world got distorted. And by that, energy is contained in so many products. And if it becomes more expensive, then also those products get more expensive. So another driver for inflation. And the last one, then because there was so much inflation, the central banks, they made a turnaround and ended the epoch of cheap money and increased the interest rates. So once more, another driver with more expensive money. So they cut the money supply, and by that they could decrease inflation, but not for those that were already indebted since the housing crisis. So in short, we saw many parts of societies that were really under financial pressure, and because of that, there was political reactions. And the culprit was easily found. That was the Green Deal, because I don't. Maybe it was the only political decision. The other one are all external forces like markets, the housing crisis, or nature with the sanitary crisis. So Green Deal was the culprit for all this development and financial pressure on parts of society. So then the conclusion was, well, the green transition failed. But my question is, I want to challenge that. Did it really fail? And I want to argue in the next slides, no, it did not fail. Even though it was said it was the culprit, it just didn't go far enough. And so sustainability reporting as one part of the green transition in from a historical perspective again, in the year 2000s, sustainability reporting was seen as a means for increasing the transparency for consumers, that they then, as the professor said before, consume responsible with the 5R mantra, refuse unsustainable products that you could easily identify thanks to sustainability reporting in by the companies. So at that time, sustainability reporting was a pure marketing instrument. Then later, there was the next phase, the financial era, that was after the Paris Agreement, and the mechanism was here a little bit different. So the world leaders agreed on the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of temperature in a global average temperature increase since the industrialization. And so that imposed some risks on the companies so that there could be carbon pricing in the future, and then some industry would not be viable anymore. And so this time it was so this mechanism also led to the more increased interest in sustainability reporting, to see now from a risk perspective, how much are companies exposed to that risk that they get unviable? And that, excuse me, and so that also got some positive results. So I found two journal papers from 2000 and from 20 and 21, and they analyzed the effect of ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance disclosure, so sustainability reporting, the impact of that on the interest rates of loans, of corporate loans. And these journal papers, they identified the reduced cost of debt. So the more companies disclose of data, the cheaper their loans get, and also the better perform, the cheaper their loans get. But that only had a really, really small effect with, if you put them together, nearly 0.4% cheaper interest rates. And so, for example, if you take a company with 25 million euros in assets, and 70% of those assets is debt, then they would save around 50,000 euros a year in terms of their financing costs. So it's not a game changer yet. It makes a little difference, but it's not a game changer yet, as we would like to see. So there's a missing step for sure to that sustainability reporting can be the transformational lever, as I announced in the beginning. And to guide you through this lever, I first want to explore what's actually the aim of doing business. So let's get back a step and take a broader look on the economy. So, in my perspective, when companies are small, they are agile, they can pivot quickly, and their main goal is to grow. And for that, they focus on customer needs to really serve the customers. But then, if they get successful and grow further, they become large companies, and then they really feel the red ocean. That's the that's an That's the entrepreneurial term in the competitive environment where there are a lot of other sharks, and that's why a lot of blood. So the ocean turned red, and then those companies they need to change their focus, and they reach their maturity phase, and they focus on survival only. And as a consequence, in this survival mode, companies they are forced to externalize costs because of the competition in the red ocean and the lack of regulation, which means it's allowed to externalize the costs. Which cost can they externalize? Well, pollution, but also healthcare costs. So in this linear materials economy, they don't need to care about the end of life of their products that they put into circulation. And And so that's the problem that already Aristotle, 2,300 years ago, um, defined or identified when he identified when he defined the terms what's economy in Greek oikonomia means, and the opposite that's what he called grammatistike. And so he pinned it down to the money. If money is a means and the end of the economy is the good life for everyone, that's what the economy should be for. So what's the aim of the economy? It should be the good life. But if money becomes an end, and if we measure everything in money, so success, if you grow, if you make more profits, that's then the perverted economy. And I I sketched this cause and effect chart to see to visualize that. So if the business aim just for making profit, then they avoid taxes, then they only create shareholder value, they do negative lobbying, they exploit the nature, and that has all negative feedback loops. So exploiting nature leads to biodiversity loss, and that reduces the business's capability of making more profit in the long run. Then tax avoidance leads to inequality in society. Negative lobbying leads to the decline of democracy, and eventually we have more unregulated markets and also social unrest. And so in the long run, businesses can make less profits. So our vision at the Economy for the Common Good is to redefine the aim of the economy. Instead of making profit, it should be the high contribution to the common good. And then businesses would change their behavior. They would respect nature, contribute their fair share, not only focus on shareholders but stakeholders, and do positive lobbying. And in the end, we strengthen the democracy and we have regulated markets to do no harm and hopefully social peace. And so, how can we get to this vision? And that's the solution that the economy for the common good is proposing. So, as the first steps, and then come back to sustainability reporting. So companies report their contributions to the common good in a report every 2 years. Then auditors, they check those contributions and benchmark those, so they give a company points, high points and low points, from minus 2,600 to plus 1,000 points. And then there's a third step, and the economy for the common good is advocating that politicians provide incentives. So on the left side, they will on the low point side, they want to discourage damage through higher taxes, and on the high point side, they want to reward those high contributions by granting tax benefits, low customs, or priority in public procurement. So that in the end, ethical companies should have a competitive advantage, and then competition should not revolve around making the cheapest products, but should revolve around contributing most to the common good, that everyone can have a good life. So this is our theory of change. So we need pioneering companies and municipalities that shift their public procurement, and they convince business partners to reach a critical mass so that the movement has a political voice. And then once we have the critical mass, politicians will shift the incentives and thus demand, and that closes the circle to bring in more companies. So in the end, it will be like those fireflies in the background. Only if we are many, it will be nice. And the economy for the common good started, oh, sorry for the typo, it started out in 2010 as a reaction to the last big financial crisis, because in Austria, where I'm from originally, and it spread since then mainly in German and Spanish-speaking countries. Last year we founded a chapter in Japan, and you see the members. So we have 4,000 volunteers, already 1,300 certified businesses, local chapters and municipalities in 33 countries. And we started in 2010 as a reaction to the financial crisis, because we saw the banks that were too big to fail and that were taking high risks, and privatized their profits, and then the losses were socialized. And there were many more unethical corporate behaviors that we wanted to discourage through our alternative model. And so the context changed since that, as I previously explained, and now it's really to strengthen democracy also on the local level. So as a summary, the missing step after the financial area that already provided a few benefits is that we introduce the benchmark, the audits, and the incentives. And then sustainability reporting can be a game changer, and it can support the green transition, because then we will have business models, sustainable business models that are really viable and not just the market niche. And here I invite you to join the economy for the common good. It's not only a business movement, but also there are a lot of volunteers involved, and we operate with local chapters, so it's a really decentralized movement. You can become a member, or you donate, or you first check out our website econgood.org. So I thank you for your attention and look forward to the exchange.